Emergency edition of Canucks Conversation. Breaking news. Derek Forbert has re-signed with the Vancouver Canucks. Hello, Canucks fans. Welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation. My name is Dave Woodrelli. I'm joined by Harman Dial. Canucks Conversation is brought to you by Bet365. Couple news items to get to today, and in a way, they're a little bit related because the title of today's episode is Canucks hire Kevin Dean, but it really should be now Canucks signed Derek Forbert, who was coached by Kevin Dean. And I think Derek Forbert likes Kevin Dean. We've heard Rick Dollyball talking about that for a while now. We're going to dive into all of this news and much more. Of course, we also have to talk about the Abbotsford Canucks game, as the Abbotsford Canucks did not go up 3-0 in their series over the Texas Stars. Dave Hall is going to join us in a matter of moments to talk about that. But Harm, we're obviously going to talk about it throughout the show. But just your initial reaction to Derek Forbert signing.
Yeah, I like the contract for the Canucks. The fact that it's just a one-year deal. Term was always the biggest question mark for me because Forbert is on the older side. He's 33 years old, and we know that durability and injuries have been an issue with him in the past. So my concern with retaining Forbert was the idea of having to commit a 2 or 3 year extension to him. But to keep the term down to 1 year is a solid work. And a $2 million cap hit, it's fair for both sides. It's not a bargain necessarily, but I think he can live up to that kind of cap hit if he can give them another solid 55 to 60 games this season. The key is that he's elite on the penalty kill. And we know that for the Canucks, you're potentially going to be losing Pia Suter in free agency, who was on your first unit PK, but also Teddy Bluger. He's a name that we haven't talked a lot about. If the Canucks want to carve out some extra cap space, and because Aatu Ratu is presumably going to be ready to push for an everyday NHL lineup slot down the middle, Bluger could become a piece that they move out this offseason. Because think about it, you got PD at 1C, you're probably bringing in a second line center. That would bump Heel down to the third line center position. Then 4C, if you want Ratu in that spot, Bluger probably has to go somewhere else. So Bluger was a first unit PK guy as well. Imagine if they lost Suter, Bluger, and Forbert all off their PK. That's 3/4 of your top PK unit, and we know how important the Canucks penalty kill was. It was best in the NHL for the second half of the season. That's something that they want to maintain moving forward.
Yep, absolutely. And look, we've given Derek Forbert his flowers at many points this past season for his penalty killing ability. This feels like the first Adam Foote signing. Does that feel safe to say?
Maybe. I think this made sense to do regardless of whether they kept Foote or regardless of whether they'd hired Foote as head coach or not, though.
Of course, yeah. And of course, Adam Foote really likes Derek Forbert, but you're right. It would have been one that they would have kept regardless. Yes, so some reaction to this in the chat right now. KJ says a D prospect is getting traded now, and people are saying, I hope, Michael Avali, regular listener show, said, I hope we keep Mancini over Willander. The kid's been a stud for Abbotsford these playoffs. I don't know if I necessarily look at this and say, oh, well, this is evidence that the Canucks are definitely going to trade a defenseman. I think there was a hole there. I think this is just now a hole that they don't need to address in free agency. But I think they were always going to get a bottom pair defenseman. I just don't think they'll do it now. I think they're done.
Yeah, to me, they needed a veteran, especially on the left side, defenseman who could help on the PK regardless of whatever happens with some of their D prospects. Of course, you want to give DPD a shot and you expect him to contend for a spot. But I've mentioned this before. I don't see a scenario where at the start of the season, you have all three of DPD, Mancini, and Willander at the lineup. Yeah. Now, maybe one of those guys gets traded. Maybe one of those guys ends up in the AHL. But I just, when you're facing an all-in season where the expectation is to contend right away, it is really difficult to have half your blue line consist of defensemen that, while they have a lot of promise and talent, don't have much in the way of NHL experience and are going to be learning the ropes. And you needed a veteran further down the lineup for those guys to be able to lean on, to play with. And Forbert, here's the other thing too. He doesn't need to be in the lineup every night. Even going back to his time in Boston, he was a guy that was sort of in and out of lineup at times. So if there is a scenario where, let's say, some of these D prospects knock it out of the park and you want DPD to be in the lineup every single night, you can do that. Forbert can sit out as the seventh defenseman occasionally. He doesn't need to be stapled in as the definitive number 6 at D-man. And I actually like the idea of potentially pairing him with whichever one of Mancini or Willander makes a team out of camp next season, because both guys, Mancini especially, can skate the puck, can move it up the ice. It gives them a little bit more freedom to be able to create, knowing that they have a safety net in Forbert who's responsible defensively and can clean up messes.
And someone in the chat, Caltros Rico, just said this: what an upgrade over Desharnais and Juleson. Yeah, it is. It's going to be a better defense group heading into next season. I'm sure we'll get more reaction to it. We'll talk about it more than anyone else. We still haven't talked about Kevin Dean, which we'll do later after our next segment, which is brought to you by Pacific Toyota Dealers, who want to tell you about the 100% electric Toyota BZ4X, an SUV packed with plenty of space. The BZ4X can handle any terrain and can take you from the city to the slopes. It's backed by the peace of mind that comes with knowing you're driving a Toyota. And if you're driving a BZ4X, you get access to HOV lanes, even if you're driving alone. When you choose the BZ4X, you can get a $5,000 incentive, and right now you can finance a 2025 BZ4X LE all-wheel drive from 0.99% APR for 36 months. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. Dave Hall joins us now, the prospects guru over at CanucksArmy.com. Writes about the Abbotsford Canucks as well. The Abbotsford Canucks did not pick up a victory, Dave. What did you see in Game 3?
No, they did not. And, you know, after a long playoff run like this, let's be real, this is the only team left that's played every single round in the Calder Cup playoffs. So it's been a long run. Eventually, you're going to run into a bit of a dud, and last night just seemed to be it. It was a bit of a difference in the fact that I thought they actually started a little bit stronger than they typically have, which was promising, but they just didn't have it in the second half. And finally, special teams came up and bit them in the butt, and you knew it was going to happen eventually. You can't go 97.5% on the penalty kill for an entire run, so it was bound to happen forever eventually. And you know, we were talking on Rinkwide pretty much all series long and all playoffs long how Abbotsford has done a great job at shutting down the other team's top guys, but you just knew with, you know, a line like the Texas Stars have, eventually they were going to break through and find a way. And you know, a guy like Matej Blumel, who was the leading AHL goal scorer rather, with 39 goals in the regular season, you knew he was going to finally get there, and he did last night. So
considering how top heavy Texas is offensively, them being able to return to home for Game 3, you know, win there, how much do you think them having last change and having more control over matchups could perhaps influence the rest of the series when they do play on home ice?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I mean, that goes to say with any home team. So now that they got 3 games at home here, I think it's a real opportunity for them to kind of take over. And you know, the nice thing though is that Abbotsford, they've been pretty sound defensively, and you know, whether that's the fourth pair or not, like they've actually done a pretty good job at collapsing and clogging up that middle of the ice, so that the player, like even last night's goals, a couple of them on the odd man rush, but a lot of them on the power play on the perimeter, right? Like they're not really getting inside. So it's one nice thing. Obviously, the 5th goal last night was a completely different story. That was just a bit of a blunder on pretty much every single angle you can think of. But I think it's going to be a factor. But at the same time, I think Abbotsford has done a pretty good job at building up that defense and shutting things down in the middle.
What did you make of the finish of that game? Sammy Blais really mixing it up. What did you make of the finish?
The finish, like as in like the end of the game?
Yeah, Sammy Blais getting escorted out, it looked like.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I mean, it was just like Game 2, right? It's getting fired up. I will say I've really loved Sammy Blais since January. I've pretty much thought that he's built a case for a 2-way contract, whether that be in Vancouver or not. But he's really there's been some wires crossing in the last couple games here, and that dates back from the Colorado series. So like he's the heartbeat of the team physically and emotionally, obviously, but lately it's kind of gotten to the point where he kind of needs to tone it down a little bit. So it's I think at this point it's been one of those series where Game 1 was a little bit tame, but since Game 2 it's been a bit of a battle, and guys like Sammy Blais, Cole Lind on the other end, they're just getting into it. And so I think that's just Sammy Blais. You know, they had a pretty rough second and third period last night. So I think that's just Sammy Blais saying, hey, we're coming for you next game. Like you got us this one, but we're coming right back in Game 4. So
yeah, Blais during this playoff run has looked like the Tom Wilson of the AHL.
Yep.
Not just in terms of the physicality, but also he makes plays offensively, brings so much energy. And when he is barreling down on the forecheck, it really feels like he strikes some fear into the opposing defenseman. I want to ask you about Artur Silovs. We've had this debate on the show yesterday, actually. We know he has had a terrific all-time heater kind of playoff run here.
Yep.
Big picture, how would you approach his future? Do you worry about him potentially getting claimed off waivers? Would you proactively look to deal him in the summer, considering the risk of maybe losing him on waivers? How would you approach his future?
I think it's a little bit challenging because I think it all depends on what they do with Thatcher Demco, right? I think it all depends on the return that they can get for Thatcher Demco. Like I think it's tough with a run like this, where I know that for a guy like me or for the fans that are watching every single Abbotsford game, night in, night out, they know Artur Silovs and they think the entire league is looking at it like we are. But, like I'm not quite sold on the fact that Artur Silovs has as much return as we might think he does. Like I just don't, we've seen goalies make this kind of run almost every year in the AHL. I mean, Hunter Shepard with Washington's system, with the Hershey Bears is kind of a perfect example, of a really good goaltender that, in their eyes over in Hershey, he was the be all end all. And no one really cared. Once he got into the NHL, no one wants to claim him, right? And so, not saying that they're comparable. I would pump the brakes on really thinking. Like, I do think there's a chance he could get claimed, but I just don't know if you're making your entire plan based on the fact that he's going to get claimed. I still think he probably needs to be in the AHL next year. I just don't know if if you want to put all your eggs in the Kevin Lankinen, Artur Silovs basket just yet. But again, that can all change depending on what the return is for Thatcher Demco. I think that's really like the plateau for me is what you get and what your plans are with the Thatcher Demco, tandem really.
Okay, so let's talk about the Demko situation outside of and sort of unrelated to the Silovs conversation. What would you do if you're the Canucks and you've got this decision to make on Demko? You've got three options really. You can look to extend him, you can look to trade him, you can look to essentially say neither one of those. We're going to go into the final year of his contract and we're going to keep him, but we're not necessarily going to make a long-term commitment to him. It's obviously tough to, definitively weigh and say one of those options when you don't know precisely what an extension costs and what the trade return is. But just on first glance, what way would you perhaps be leaning?
I would personally be leaning on trying to extend Thatcher Demco to a short-term extension and go and ride a nice tandem of Kevin Lankinen and Demko for, X amount of dollars. Is that realistic? I'm not quite sure. That'll be something that they have to go about themselves. It would be, I mean, we see this day and age, there's a lot of tandems. So if you can ride a Thatcher Demco, Kevin Lankinen tandem, that's fantastic. That being said, if you can, so that would be my number one. I think just extending Demko on a shorter term, hopefully team friendly. I know there's going to be a little bit of give and take on both ends. I think that's my number one. And then second, if you can't come to the terms with it, I'd be looking at dealing Thatcher Demko. I think you're going to get a lot more, injury problems or not, I think you're going to get a lot more return for a Thatcher Demko from what we see in the last 12 months than an Artur Silovs with, a pretty good run that we've seen him do three years in a row now that hasn't been able to duplicate that in the regular season yet. So for me, number one, extend Demko if you can and ride that, cheap, quote unquote, cheap tandem up the middle. If not, I'd be looking at trying to recoup assets. Because let's be real. Like, I think this goes with almost everyone right now. I think you realistically have to look at their window and think next year, even if they were to bring in said top six forward, let's just say, are they really making the Stanley Cup run? You know what I mean? Like, I think it's for me, and what a surprise. The prospect guy wants them to think more long term, but I just think eventually you have to pick a lane, and I think long term goal is probably the way to think here. So if you can recoup some assets for Thatcher Demko and you think it's worth it and you don't think you're going to come to an extension, I think that's the answer.
Hard to disagree with that, Dave. Hard to disagree with that. And I think, I'll just tell you, I think they're a year away from being where you're at, where they say, okay, yeah, we need to start thinking long term.
I know.
They're
that's
a year
just
away.
Me. Yeah,
they're a year away from needing to think long term. Okay, I had this one for you. Derek Forbert signs just before here, before we went live. Victor Mancini, we were just talking about it. Victor Mancini, Elias Pettersson, Tom Willander as well. You're probably not going to see all three of those guys in the lineup. That's what Harmon and I were just talking about before you joined. Which of those guys do you want to see with Derek Forbert, like, come day one of the season?
Well, remember, Pettersson has already shown, even at the NHL level, he can slide over to the right side. So, that's a nice option. Like, he's number one. I think Pettersson's the guy from now on. He's the top guy. So whether that's on the right side or you're just running, swapping him out with Derek Forbert for the rest of the year, right? Like just using Derek Forbert as that contingency plan where, maybe Pettersson needs a bit of a break. But then it's probably Mancini. Like I'm really high on Tom Verlander, but I think Mancini, he's older. He's got that size. He's got a bit of experience on him already, whether that's just pro experience, right? So I think he's probably going to be the next on that echelon, and I'd like to see him slide in. And I mean, personally, as much as I would love to see Verlander play with Vancouver, I would love to see him play in Abbotsford for a good little stint just to let him acclimate. So I think Pettersson number one for sure, and then get Mancini on the right side. Definitely. I think, as long as your expectations are reasonable with Mancini, it's not the AHL. We're talking NHL here. So as long as, I'd love to see a Forbert Mancini pair for sure.
What are the three biggest keys in your mind for Abbotsford to close out the series against Texas?
Go back to 97.5% on the PK would be nice. No, you know what? I think they just keep playing their game. They've done a really good job. Like their defense, like Artis Silovs has been phenomenal, but they've just done a really good job at really closing out every single team's top players. Like they just haven't allowed a lot of goals, and they just haven't allowed a lot of inside tracks. They've been blocking a ton of shots, and like that penalty kill, they just do such a good job in the diamond and just, keeping teams to the outside. So I just think going back to their game that they've played for 4 series now, like, yeah, they let it slip by last night. Eventually Texas's top guys were going to come out to play because they can. And I just think, just not panicking and just going back to Abbotsford Canucks hockey like they've been doing all playoffs long, or all since January, really.
Dave, great stuff as always. We'll be sure to keep an eye on your Abbotsford coverage. Are you doing all these rink wides? Like, do you have any plans to not do one coming up, or are you just on them all?
There might be one game 6. I might have a conflict, but I'm still trying to work that out. So that might be the one game, but otherwise I'm here to the finals, baby.
Hell yeah, love it, Dave. Thanks so much for doing this. Appreciate it as always.
No, thank you. Have a great day, guys.
There he is, Dave Hall, our Abbotsford guy. Love it. Love having Dave on the show. Okay, so the news we haven't talked about yet. Canucks are set to hire Kevin Dean. This is a report from Thomas Drance, and we're going to get to it in our next segment, which is brought to you by our friends over at Greta. By now, you know that Greta is a great spot to watch the big game, but did you know it's an even better spot for your upcoming party or event? If you need a venue for a team building or summer social event, check out Greta. They've got the great street food menu and the arcade game. It's always a ton of fun with a lot of options. Make Greta your spot for your next event. For more info and to book your event, go to gretabar.com. Greta Bar, 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin. Okay. I don't know if Jacob needs to turn on his mic, but this is the
our streaming software is completely broken again. So the rest of the show will be like this, unfortunately. I'm sorry to everyone watching. But
Except
yeah,
for
completely
Toyota.
broken. I cannot do anything.
So we just have a Toyota ad on the screen for the rest of the show?
Oh, the Toyota ads on the screen?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not on my screen. So yeah, like I said, completely broken.
Yeah, Quads and I are Toyota's
Jacob
ad is
just got
gone
rid of it.
now.
Jacob,
Okay.
it's the giant baby now. I'm joking. I'm joking. Okay. We'll make do. It'll work on the it'll work on the podcast, but that was good. Jacob, if you can, just put the giant baby up for the rest of the show. We'll make do. Okay. So yeah, like I said, this segment brought to you by Greta. So this report came from Thomas Drance. We heard the name Kevin Dean in the past few days. The past week, we actually heard it. Rick Dhaliwal threw it out, and I think he actually threw it out with the context of, I think a good way to get Derek Forbert to sign would be to bring his old coach in Kevin Dean. Sure enough, Canucks hire Kevin Dean, and Derek Forbert signs shortly thereafter. What a pull by Dhaliwal. What a gut feeling that Rick Dhaliwal had there. This was a report from Drance. He said, hearing Canucks will be hiring former Blackhawks and Bruins assistant coach Kevin Dean, whose name Dhaliwal surfaced last week, to join Adam Foote's staff. Foote and the club are still finalizing the rest of the staff. Expect Dean hire to be announced when that's complete. So that's the important thing to mention here. Canucks haven't announced it officially, but they're not going to announce one head coaching hiring. They're going to make their other hirings. Those are going to come, you would expect in the coming days, maybe week. I don't know when, but they're going to announce it all at once. They're not going to do, Kevin Dean doesn't get his own press release. That's not how it works. So it's going to be all at once. They're going to announce the full staff for the year. So Obviously, this is leading to questions of what is Kevin Dean going to do? Who is Kevin Dean? And third, who else is going to round out that staff? So right now, Yogi Svechkovsky is the only other coach, now Kevin Dean as well, behind the bench alongside Adam Foote. Kevin Dean is going to be the defense coach, it would seem. That was his role in both Chicago and Boston. And Foote talked about needing to hire a defense coach. And he kind of joked about like, well, I would like to run the defense myself, but I need to hire a coach to do it. So this is their guy, Kevin Dean, hired as the Canucks defensive strategies coach.
Yeah, first of all, forget the keep Quinn Hughes plan. This is quite clearly a keep Derek Forbert plan, your true franchise defenseman. Derek Forbert calling the shots here. But no, in all seriousness, I like this hire. He has a lot of experience running defenses, again, as you alluded to, in Chicago for the last 3 seasons, and then in Boston for 5 or 6 years. So he's got a lot of experience. This isn't the case of going sort of cheap or the inexperienced route, which is important, right? Because in Adam Foote, you're looking at a head coach that himself doesn't have a lot of experience. And this is where we've been saying, when you evaluate what the Canucks do with their coaching staff as a whole, a big part of assessing that is going to be what's the quality of the assistant coaches that they surround him with. And I like the Dean hiring from that perspective. Dean has a lot of experience working with young defensemen. That's what he did a lot of in Chicago, because the Blackhawks, outside of Seth Jones, really didn't have a lot of experienced established defensemen, and they've been in a rebuild mode. So he's worked with a lot of their younger defensemen in recent times, getting them acclimated to the NHL style of game. And honestly, working multiple of them in at the same time, which is noteworthy because the Canucks, of course, in a phase where they're potentially trying to work some of DPD, Mancini, and Willander into the lineup and make sure that they're ready from a development standpoint to hit the ground running in the NHL. In Chicago, Alex Vlasic has taken massive strides. He was drafted originally in the 3rd round and was sort of a project defenseman, 6'6", but he didn't have the puck skills or the skating to necessarily profile as a top 4 defenseman. But over the last 2 years, he's turned into a legit top 4 shutdown stud, a core part of that Blackhawks team. And honestly, they're de facto number 1 defenseman now that Seth Jones is gone. Outside of Vlasic, I mean, it hasn't all been positive, right? So Kevin Korchinski, really high draft pick, probably rushed in the NHL in 2023-24. He struggled defensively. And then this past season, he split time between Rockford and the NHL, mostly in Rockford. But other guys as well. I mean, Sam Rinzel on the right side of the blue line played 9 games down the stretch, and he exceeded all expectations. And looks like, all right, he could be a building block on the blue line. And then Lev Shanov as well, towards the end of the season, came up from Rockford and impressed at the NHL level. So I'd say it's been mostly positive, what we've seen from Blackhawks defensemen, especially the younger ones during Dean's time running the defense there. And while he was in Boston, the Bruins perennially had one of the most rock solid defenses in the NHL. So he's an experienced voice. I like his track record. He should be a solid fit here.
Yeah, I was going to say the thing that stands out is obviously that this wasn't a cheap hire, and that was the thing that everybody was kind of wondering about. The quiet part out loud, was this organization going to cheap out where they could? And obviously assistant coaches is a place you can. This wouldn't be a cheap hire. So yeah, kudos to the organization. Kevin Dean seems like a really good fit. Now, someone in the chat, and I want to give a shout out because they brought it up, and it was my fun fact. Yeah, here it is. Reg M in the chat said, Kevin Dean is the only player I know that has won a Stanley Cup and Calder Cup in the same year. I noticed this when I was looking at this Hockey DB page, and I had it all geared up. He was part of the Albany River Rats and the New Jersey Devils. The Devils won the Cup in 94-95, and the Albany River Rats won the Calder Cup in 94-95. He was a part of both teams. And not only just like, oh, he played regular season games, so he's going to get his name, he's going to get his ring. He played 3 games for the Devils during that playoff run, and he played 8 for Albany during that Calder Cup playoff run. So he played playoff games for both teams, helped both teams in a playoff race, and that is great. I love a fun fact like that. The fact he played for both teams, like that's the thing. You would see, he's a champion because he was on the team in the regular season. Like, no, actually played playoff games for both of those teams. That is great. And you know what? One day we're going to get Kevin Dean on the show and have him explain that story to us, because that's great. I love that.
I wonder how the scheduling worked out too, because typically deep playoff runs, NHL and AHL is going on at the same time. So I wonder how that split worked and
why it happened.
Was he moving up and down consistently? And so 11 games combined, you'd assume he spent time sort of as a healthy scratch too, and probably with the Devils. But I'm curious what the split was as far as, was he spending more time with the NHL team or the AHL team? And then also, did he get to be part of both parades? If the AHL team actually had a parade for winning their championship. That's cool. I don't think many people or like players can relate to that experience.
Do AHL teams have parades? I was wondering about that.
Yeah, on second thought, they probably don't. Do they?
You don't think they do? I thought they do. I thought they would. You said they don't.
I don't remember.
I think they do. Hang on.
Yeah, sometimes it'll be a parade, or it'll just be like a community event. Like I googled it. I think the Hershey Bears did like a.
Yeah, the Marlies did.
Like the Hershey Bears did. They did a thing in their arena. It looks like they had all the players lined up on a stage, and the fans just came into the arena, and they kind of did like a rally, I guess, instead of a full-on parade.
No, do a full-on parade. I want a parade in Abbotsford. That's
okay. Let's not plan the parade. We plan parades, especially around. It's just as soon as someone says plan the parade in relation to a hockey team in BC, I just think back to 2011 and all the discussions around planning the parade. It does not bring back good memories.
Is it a coincidence that we're talking about planning the parade on the day that Derek Forbert resigns? I don't think so. But I'm a big parade guy. Do you know what Hats Off Day is? Did you ever cross over? Do you know what Hats Off Day is?
No.
Anyone from North Burnaby is going to know what this is. Basically, it's a parade where they shut down Hastings Street, which is a main road in North Burnaby. Well, actually, I guess you know what Hastings Street is. But anyways, when the Hastings part in North Burnaby, they call it the Heights. And all the businesses say thank you and tip their hats to all of their customers. And there's like samples and there's a parade. And it's put on by the Merchants Association out there. The Heights, it's called. And it's great. It's great. I love it. I used to go every year. I don't go much anymore. But they got like a car show and they do all sorts of stuff. Parade. I've said that about 6 times, but it's really cool. It's really fun. I'm not doing it justice. It was a good time when I was a kid. I used to go every year. It was the best.
Parades and festivals are always fun.
Yeah. Well, festivals, I don't know. You're losing me a bit on the fest.
I'm talking about Kitsilano Festival, not
what's
like
that?
an EDM
I
festival.
I don't know what it,
you don't know about Kids Fest?
Talking about that. No, what's Kids Fest?
Every summer, I don't remember what the dates are, but there's usually a weekend where there are tournaments set up for volleyball, basketball, spike ball, bunch of other events too. Plus, you have a ton of sort of local companies that have little booths by the beach, and so you just pull up to Kits, and there's just so many people going on. There's high level volleyball, high level basketball.
You got chess.
I play in the spike ball tourney too, so it's a lot of fun. I've been 2 years in a row. It's so much fun to just walk around and take everything in.
I was really good at spike ball when I played. It was
I would dust you.
Well, you're playing competitively apparently, so I'm not going to doubt that. How far have you gone in the spike ball tournament at Kids Fest?
We've lost in the semifinal of the top division both years.
So you lost.
Semifinal of the top division, not bad. Let's see how far you can make it. So you sign up a team.
Put me on your team.
I'm not taking you on. I already got a sick partner where we've got chemistry and everything. Jacob sign up as a team.
I heard your best players getting food poisoning that day. You're gonna. Okay. Yeah, Kali Canuck in the chat knows. It said, "Man, I used to live in North Burnaby when I went to BCIT. I missed out on Hat Day. Probably too new. Yeah, Hats Off Day is what it's called. Hats Off Day. It was the best. It was a lot of fun. I'd love to see it out in Abbotsford. If they win. I'm not saying, it's happening, so start planning it. But I like a parade. Don't not do a parade. Although they got that's the thing about Abbotsford. They got a big parking lot. You could do a nice
Okay, stop. Just
Right.
stop.
Just saying. All right. Okay, this is a question. Oh wait, we're not even in anyone else yet. I'm just all over the place once we started talking about Kevin Dean and hats off day. We still have to get to our poll question. So we'll do that. We'll do our poll question, which is brought to you by our friends over at the Vancouver Whitecaps. Okay, Whitecaps FC fell in the CONCACAF Champions Cup down in Mexico, but now have their focus on MLS League play with some big matches coming up. The Caps are atop the Western Conference with a 5-1-2 record at home. This Sunday at BC Place, the Caps are in action against their Cascadia rivals from Seattle. Kickoff is at 6 p.m. For tickets and more information, check out whitecapsfc.com. Okay, our poll question today is about the Abbotsford Canucks. Where do you think the parade should be? No, that's not our poll question. Our poll question is, how invested are you in the Abbotsford Canucks AHL playoff run? I'm all in, tuning in when possible, checking in on social, and I'm not interested. Harmon, the big thing for me is that just 4.2% of voters say I'm not interested. Everybody to some degree is interested in this playoff run. 45% say checking in on social, 25% say tuning in when possible, and the other 25% say they are all in on Abbotsford's playoff run. Yeah, it's fun. It's really fun to watch a playoff team. We don't get to do it all the time. So plan the parade. Obviously we're locked in, but I think even if I weren't, if I didn't have to do this for work, I would be tuned in for sure.
Yeah, a few of my friends have been asking me, how do we watch the games? They've been talking about the team. They've been watching all the highlight packs for the games that they haven't been able to tune into. So that's a pretty good barometer, because I always use my friends as a barometer for what's going on as far as like the non-diehard on Canucks Twitter everyday audience. Because they're a little bit more up and down in terms of their interest. They're invested in Abby, which I'm honestly a little bit surprised by, because usually the AHL doesn't get many non-diehards sort of invested. But even people that aren't huge hockey fans, like just anecdotally, yesterday I heard a couple of people talking about Abbotsford's run, and they're not necessarily tuned in, but the fact that they're aware of it at all, despite not being hockey fans, is pretty interesting. And I think part of that is a product of the social age, right? Whether you're on X, whether you're on Instagram, I feel like even if you aren't a core diehard Canucks fan, you're able to sort of keep up a little bit better compared to, let's say, 15 years ago when these tools weren't as prominent.
For sure. And I will also say, great job by Sportsnet 650 having the call, Brandon Astel's call on the radio. It just makes it way more accessible, because again, I know not everybody wants to pay for Flow Hockey. We see that a lot in the chat, that I would watch it, but I'm not paying $40 to watch the Abbotsford Canucks play. I get it, but really good job by Sportsnet 650 carrying that call. And of course, Brandon Astel, he does such a good job on the call.
And let's try and get Brandon onto the show. Especially if they go to the Calder Cup final. I'm sure we can work that one out. I think he'd be awesome to have and chat with.
Fully agree.
Book Brandon.
That one, you always make the joke, book so-and-so. I think we can book Brandon.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, let's get to anyone else, which is brought to you by the Vancouver Canadians. The Seas are on the road this week, but we'll be back at the Nat starting next Tuesday, June 10th, for a 6-game set with Spokane. On June 10th, it's the dog day of summer at the Nat, where you can bring your pup to the park. There's also a nooner at the Nat on Friday the 13th with first pitch at 1:05 p.m. Saturday the 14th is Blue Jays Day, and the weekends with a White Spot Family Fun Sunday as well. For tickets, call 604-872-5232 or check out CanadiansBaseball.com. Okay, here we go. We've got Marty Necas trade rumors galore. Okay, you saw this yesterday as well?
No, I didn't see.
Apparently, Marty Necas isn't a fit in Colorado. They might not want to pay Marty Necas. I thought he was a great fit in Colorado, but I can't remember where this came from. I heard Sat talking about it as well, because Sat really likes Necas. Okay, this was from, and I'm going to find out exactly who it was from. I'm reading
this is from Nick Caprios dropped a trade board.
Okay. Yeah, list of NHL players to watch as potential trade candidates. This is what Kip Rios put in the article. After the Avalanche moved Rantanen because of how difficult they perceive contract extension talks to be going, how much patience will they have with Necas, not a homegrown player or superstar talent, if negotiations on an extension start slowly this July? There was a sense Necas wasn't overly thrilled with his experience in Colorado and that he wants to explore other options. Now, this is an interesting one.
But before we dive into the potential fit, and I'm not trying to dispute any of Kipper's reporting. He's obviously plugged in. He knows what he's talking about.
Sounds like you're about to.
About a month after the trade was made, what I had heard was that Necas was actually pleased with how he was fitting in and how McKinnon had sort of taken him under his wing. They're playing on the same line together. Necas apparently thinks the world of McKinnon. If anything, it was like a whoa, this is going so well type of feeling between Necas and Colorado. Now, obviously, he didn't have the best playoff run, and working out his next contract extension may not be straightforward because he's going to have the track record to command a pretty significant raise here. But I'd be curious. Maybe I'll have to do some extra digging on if anything's changed, because about a month after the trade was made, my understanding was that Necas and Colorado, like both sides, are pretty pleased and happy with the fit.
Yeah, but then McKinnon saw him eating normal pasta. And it was game over, and now Necas wants out. Okay, so let's say, and you know, obviously this thing, you know, might just be a rumor, might not be something that ends up happening. Might be he re-signs and says, yeah, no, I've always loved it here. And Colorado says, yeah, we've always loved Marty Necas. We wanted to get him re-signed. But if this report is to be believed, is there a fit in Vancouver? Because I remember last year, obviously Marty Necas has been tied to the Canucks multiple times, but when we talked about it, Harm, didn't we also point out the fact that like he's not a very good defensive player, and if Rick Tocchet were still here, that probably wouldn't work out. Adam Foote, is he all that different from Rick Tocchet, where you're like, oh yeah, Marty Necas would for sure work with Adam Foote as the coach? What do you think about Marty Necas and the potential fit in Vancouver? Because we've also got a trade package as well from some listeners of what it might cost.
Yeah, you're right about him not necessarily being the best defensively, and you need a coach that's going to be okay with him taking chances and risks and occasionally turning pucks over, because he's a creative, dynamic type, and you need to give him room to spread his wings. And with that said, his offensive upside is just through the roof. If he's available, he's a higher upside guy than pretty much anybody else who'd be available. Higher upside than Peterka, than Lafreniere, then Zegras, then Rossi, whoever you really want to name, outside of obviously the tier of players that fans will throw out but probably aren't available. You know, the Tage Thompsons, Dylan Larkins, like outside of those guys, I can't think of a forward who is going to be available on, let's say, the trade market with a higher offensive upside than Necas. I mean, he put up even before the trade to Colorado, he put up 55 points in 49 games on a Carolina team that he was doing the heavy lifting all by himself. And we know that he's a speedy, dynamic type off the rush. The skill level is off the charts. He can manufacture rush chances by himself at will. But that's a conversation where between Alvin and Foote, they're gonna have to make sure, are you okay with a winger that has this kind of profile? Because there's no point acquiring a guy and then immediately limiting him as far as his creativity and the player feeling like he can't take as many chances. You have to be comfortable with some level of risk tolerance, understanding that this is a player that easily has 70, 80 point potential. So yes, I would 100% be considering Necas if he's available on the trade market.
I agree with you. You also got that defense core back there. Let your forwards take some risks. You got a great defense core. You should have a great defense core, which brings me to a question from Calcios Rico, who said, if the Canucks don't end up moving one of their young guys, is this the best D-core in the league next season? It's certainly in the upper echelon, but it's not. I don't know if it's best in the league, especially when you've got Tyler Myers penciled in for the top four. And I don't even say that as like a disrespect of Tyler Myers. It's just that he's going to get a year older. What does Tyler Myers look like next year? I don't know if it's a hot take to say Tyler Myers' best years might be behind him, and he still might have good years. But again, like, this is a guy that's penciled into the top 4, not the best in the league, I don't think.
Yeah, it's certainly above average. It's a strength of theirs, but
I mean, Hughes makes it at least in the upper echelon for sure.
yeah, it's probably top 10 blue line in the NHL. But it's not so good that it's going to be able to compensate for a weak forward group, for example.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Okay. Let's see what else was here. Yeah, this one from Zippity Zap. I like this in the chat. He said, now with Kevin Dean, the Canucks are unstoppable. Stanley Cup, here we come. This is reminding me of Brad Shaw, when Brad Shaw got hired and did that one interview, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, he's going to fix everything. Okay, what else was there? There was actually some good ones in the chat today. There's a lot, so I'm trying to scroll through them all. We've got a lot of listeners. Maybe it's because there was news today, so people come back out of the woodwork. A lot of people watching the show today. So with that, I should remind everybody, fill out the Family Feud survey. We're going to play on Thursday. No show on Wednesday. That would be tomorrow. No show, so this is my last chance to remind everybody to go fill out the Family Feud survey. We still need responses, so go fill it out. It's in the description on podcast and on YouTube as well. Okay, this one from Rajcraft. I want to revisit Teddy Blueger because he just said this. If Canucks need to free up more cap space for top 6 players, who do you think the Canucks would trade? I hadn't really thought about Teddy Blueger, but like I am now thinking about Teddy Blueger as being a guy that the Canucks might ship out. You know, you hear Connor Garland, the thought of that, extension eligible. Does he want to sign an extension? Do the Canucks want to sign him to an extension? What does it look like? You know, does he have surplus value? That's really the exercise, is you just look at who would have value around the league to the point where you're not having to attach an asset to get out of their money. I think Connor Garland's in that conversation. I think Teddy Blueger's in that conversation as well.
Nils Höglander potentially too. Now, I have said for a long time that I believe in his talent. I believe in his skill set, but Alvin needs to sit down with Adam Foote and say, how long of a leash are you willing to give Nils Höglander? You've seen the player firsthand on the bench for a long time. If you view him similarly to Rick Tocchet, where the leash is going to be short and he may be moving up and down the lineup, playing 11, 12 minutes a night, then it's pointless. It doesn't matter how good a player is. If he's not a fit for your head coach, if your head coach isn't going to use him, then what are we doing? At $3 million, then that could probably be better spent, better allocated elsewhere in terms of the cap commitment. Again, if it was up to me, I would keep Höglander. But if Foote won't trust Höglander, then and I'm not saying that I know that he won't, just that if he's in a similar boat as Tocchet, then he's a name that you'd probably consider too.
All right, speaking of names to consider, this one was from Travis Wall. He said, do you guys have a short list for an offensive-minded assistant coach to join Adam Foote's staff? That's really the final piece of the puzzle, right? Like, they've got Kevin Dean. Obviously, you've got Yogi Svechkovsky, who's going to run the power play. They needed an offensive-minded coach, an offensive strategies coach, if you will. Do you have a name in mind?
I don't have one yet. It's I'll be honest, I haven't had a chance to do a deep dive on like what power play coaches are sort of available in the NHL, because of course you can look at the best power plays in the NHL, but if you're trying to poach their the person who runs their power play, why would they come here for a lateral
Yogi
job?
Running the power play though?
He is, but I wouldn't be surprised if, and I'm not reporting anything, but just logically speaking, Yogi's only had 1 year of experience as an assistant, only 1 year running the power play, and I think he did fine. But given that Foote doesn't have a lot of experience, could Yogi go back to being eye in the sky or focusing more just on the skill side? It's not a guarantee that he has the power play portfolio again next season. Interesting.
Okay.
And look, like that. One idea I liked was when Cam Robinson mentioned, hey, if Jay Woodcroft isn't able to land a head coaching gig, he's had offensive success in Edmonton. Could you bring him into the fold? But the question I would then have is, most of Woodcroft's experience at the NHL and AHL level has primarily been at the head coaching level. He hasn't been purely running a power play. So how much specific experience does he have in that capacity? If he does, like, that's a name to consider. But I'll be honest, I don't have a long list of, high-end power play coaches that I know definitively are available.
All right. Line change in the chat said, and this is a super chat, so it goes to the BC Mental Health Foundation. We appreciate the donation. All of our super chats go to the BC Mental Health Foundation, changing the face of mental health and addiction by supporting breakthroughs in care, public understanding, research, and knowledge exchange. It is a super chat. It is $2.79. Appreciate it. He said, and from the line change, he said, Mark Crawford. That's a blast from the past. I brought up Mark Crawford because the name got brought up unprompted at the Adam Foote presser, which I absolutely loved. Bring him home. Mark Crawford. I would love to see Mark Crawford come back. It'd be great.
Yeah, I think that ship has probably sailed, unfortunately.
We'll see. We'll see. Because that would also be an expensive hire. 2 expensive hires? Now we're
if I remember correctly, I was looking at it recently. Crawford had a bunch of success the last couple of years in Europe, but I think it was this season, it might have been this season or last year, he left like a first place team halfway through the year due to mental health reasons.
Yeah.
So I think he might just be done coaching.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see what the future holds for Mark Crawford. Was it mental health reasons? I thought it was health reasons.
I think it was just listed as like personal reasons. So it might have been health, might have been mental health. I don't remember if it was specified or not. But yes, for whatever
regardless, the point is
we're
not sure if Mark Crawford is available. Sure. Okay. Adam Oates, easy. That one from Hachiroku. Easy. Bring in Adam Oates. Done deal. Okay. Cynical Prick 2 in the chat said, hot take. That's a good name. Hot take that is not a hot take. Canucks will regret not signing Manny. I still don't know. Like, if Manny Malhotra is back in the AHL next year as the Abbotsford Canucks head coach, like, who knows? Manny might want to stick around there. I don't know. A lot of guys spend multiple years in the AHL, and I don't know. We'll see. All I'll say about that is we'll see. I'm a big Manny Malhotra fan. I hope he sticks around with the organization, and then we get to have him on Canucks Convo again soon. But yeah, I think that's it. Anything else you had, and anyone else?
No.
Beautiful. Oh, I had this. Noah Cates. Noah Cates got re-signed by the Flyers. The dream died. I was really excited for him to potentially be a PS Suter replacement. I saw Flyers fans, and the deal was a 4x4. I saw Flyers fans complaining about it. The cap's going up. He probably would have got offer sheeted for more than that. I think that's a fine deal. And AFP Analytics even chimed in and said that is a team-friendly deal that Noah Cates signed in Philadelphia. But yeah, the dream dies. Noah Cates staying in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's a solid deal for both sides. He gets some term. He gets some security. That's a sizable payday. But also for the Flyers, he is such a valuable, versatile Swiss Army knife type centerman who can play up and down your lineup, chip in with secondary offense, really reliable defensively, helps on the PK. Good deal for both sides.
Yeah. All right. Okay. We will close it out there. No, we'll go to Bet365. Oh yeah, I also found this out about Noah Cates that I wanted to mention as well. Noah Cates' nickname is Catesy, and I'm just so confident that Kevin Dean's nickname is Diener.
Yeah, probably. What else would it be?
It's just so lame.
Catesy is bad. That's tough.
Catesy is so bad. All right. I'm going with a baseball bet. So as you know, the Colorado Rockies...
I would rather call him Cater. I mean, that's bad too, but Catesy that's awful.
Catesy sucks. Yeah. No good. I don't like it. All right. Colorado Rockies are not very good, okay, as you know, but they're playing the Miami Marlins, who are also not very good. They're facing Sandy Alcantara, who was very good, but then got Tommy John surgery and hasn't been good so far this year. As such, they are heavy underdogs on the money line, the Colorado Rockies. So I am taking Rockies money line at plus 145 odds. You can get the Rockies to beat the Miami Marlins. That would be what, the Rockies' 11th win of the season, maybe 12th win of the season. They're off to one of the worst starts we've ever seen in professional sports. So I'm taking them. I'm taking Rockies money line. Tonight's the night we turn it around. Michael Liu, the writer of the Statsies during the season at Canucks Army, he's actually a Colorado Rockies fan. So my heart goes out to him. Taking that, Colorado Rockies money line. That's our bet of the day. Brought to you by Bet365. And if you want to get on the action for the Stanley Cup playoffs, Bet365 has got you covered. From game props, player props, totals, and the money line, you can even bet on futures like series winners, conference champions, the Stanley Cup champions, and much, much more. Whatever your bet is, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app and get on the game, an official partner of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Must be 19 plus to play. If you choose to play, please play responsibly. All right, we will close it out there. For my co-host, Harmon Dial, and our technical producer, Jacob Lazar, my name is Dave Virgelli. Thanks so much for the episode of Canucks Conversation.
Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.